After more than 3 decades, the world's most unforgettable romantic duo might be making a comeback. Imagine seeing Julia Roberts and Richard Gere on screen again, bringing back the same spark that made Pretty Woman a global sensation. The whispers are growing louder. Hollywood insiders are hinting, fans are buzzing, and rumors are flying faster than ever. Could it be true? Is Pretty Woman finally becoming a reality, or is this just another dream destined to fade away? Before we jump ahead to what might be coming, let's go back to where it all began, because to understand the excitement, we need to remember why this story became so special in the first place. When Pretty Woman premiered in 1990, it wasn't just another romantic comedy, it became a cultural phenomenon. Julia Roberts, then a rising star, captured hearts worldwide. As Vivian Ward, a free-spirited woman with charm, wit, and a magnetic smile. Richard Gere, already a Hollywood leading man, played Edward Lewis, the sophisticated businessman whose life took an unexpected turn when he met Vivian. Their chemistry wasn't forced, it felt natural, electric, and timeless. It was the kind of connection that made you believe in the possibility of two people from completely different worlds finding something real. The movie's plot was simple, but it was brought to life with heart and unforgettable moments. Who can forget the iconic shopping scene where Vivian walks into the boutique that had once turned her away, now dressed in style and confidence, delivering that perfect line? Big mistake, big, huge. The single moment became one of the most quoted scenes in rom-com history, or the rooftop ending, where Edward climbs the fire escape with flowers, declaring he had come to rescue her and Vivian replying she'd rescue him right back. These weren't just lines in a script, they became pieces of movie history. But Pretty Woman wasn't just about romance. It was about transformation, empowerment, and defying expectations. Vivian wasn't a damsel waiting to be saved. Was a woman who knew her worth. And Edward wasn't the typical cold businessman. His journey was about finding meaning beyond money and deals. Together, they made a story that audiences could connect with no matter their background. The film's success was staggering. Made on a modest budget, it went on to earn over $460 million worldwide. Critics praised it, audiences adored it, and Julia Roberts even earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. The soundtrack became just as famous, with Roy Orbison's "Oh, Pretty Woman" playing on repeat in homes everywhere. The movie set a new standard for romantic comedies and became the film other rom-coms would be compared to for decades. Even years later, the magic never faded. TV reruns, anniversary screenings, and streaming services kept the film alive for new generations to discover. Whenever Julia Roberts and Richard Gere reunited, whether on red carpets, in interviews, or in their later collaboration, Runaway Bride fans couldn't help but wonder if they'd ever step into Vivian and Edward's shoes again. Each reunion brought back a wave of nostalgia and fresh hope. The legacy of Pretty Woman is why sequel rumors always spark so much interest. This wasn't just a box office hit, it became part of pop culture. People still dress as Vivian for costume parties, still quote her lines, and still see her as a symbol of confidence and transformation. In a time when Hollywood is bringing back so many classic films, the idea of revisiting Vivian and Edward's world feels both risky and exciting. And that's where we are now, standing between the past we loved and the possible future that could be. If the sequel happens, it won't just be another romantic comedy. It would be a return to a story that defined a genre, shaped careers, and left a lasting mark on cinema. But as we all know, reviving a classic isn't easy. Amen. Yes. And that's why the road to Pretty Woman 2 has been full of stops, starts, and speculation. The question now is, are Julia Roberts and Richard Gere ready to take us back to that magical world? And if they are, can lightning strike twice? The next part, we'll dive into the rumors, the insider reports, and the possible truths behind the headlines to find out how close we really are to seeing this long-awaited reunion on screen. Asterisk, the whispers about Pretty Woman 2 didn't just appear out of nowhere. They've been building slowly, fueled by small hints, cryptic interviews, and sudden bursts of fan speculation. For years, The idea of Julia Roberts and Richard Gere reuniting for a sequel felt like wishful thinking. Both actors have been selective with their roles, and Julia Roberts especially has said in past interviews that she didn't want to do sequels unless the story truly mattered. But over the last year, the tone has shifted. Subtle remarks from industry insiders and strategically timed media questions have reignited the hope that Pretty Woman 2 could actually happen. It all started with a magazine interview where Richard Gere was asked if he'd ever work with Julia Roberts again. Instead of giving the usual, maybe someday response, he smiled and said, "We've talked about it." Those 4 words set off a chain reaction online. Entertainment blogs ran with the headline, social media lit up, and fans began combing through old interviews for clues. Shortly after, Julia Roberts appeared on a late-night talk show. The host mentioned Pretty Woman. She laughed and said, "You never know what the future holds." It wasn't confirmation, but it wasn't denial either, and in Hollywood, that's enough to start a storm, adding fuel to the fire. A few entertainment journalists claimed that an unnamed streaming giant, some pointing toward Netflix, others toward Amazon Prime, was exploring ways to revive classic romantic comedies. For a modern audience, the buzz was that Pretty Woman was at the top of that list because of its cross-generational appeal. Imagine a premiere on a major streaming service, instantly available to millions, with the potential to pull in not only nostalgic fans from the 90s, but also younger viewers who've only recently discovered the original. Then there were the leaked production rumors. According to one report, a script treatment had been floating around Hollywood that explored what Vivian and Edward's life might look like now. The rumor claimed that Julia Roberts had been approached with a storyline that made her emotional, enough to consider coming back. Of course, none of these details have been officially confirmed, but that's exactly why the speculation keeps growing. The mystery keeps the conversation alive. Fans have even joined in on the detective work. Some pointed out that Julia and Richard were spotted attending the same charity gala earlier this year, sparking theories that they were discussing the project privately. Others noticed that Gary Marshall's daughter, Kathleen Marshall, has been more active on social media, sharing behind-the-scenes photos from the original film. While she hasn't mentioned a sequel outright, the timing of these posts feels suspiciously aligned with the current wave of rumors. What makes this moment different from past speculation is the industry trend toward revivals and legacy sequels. Movies like Top Gun: Maverick, Hocus Pocus 2, Coming to America, have proven that there's a huge market for revisiting beloved classics. Studios are more willing to greenlight projects that blend nostalgia with fresh storytelling because they know the built-in fan base will show up. If Pretty Woman 2 were to happen now, it would be riding a wave of proven success stories. Still, not everyone is convinced. Some fans fear that the magic of the original can't be recreated, and others worry that modernizing the story could strip away its charm. But that hasn't stopped online discussions from exploding. Reddit threads, fan-made posters, and even mock trailers are circulating widely. In many ways, the audience is already emotionally invested in a sequel that doesn't officially exist yet. And that's the key point. Whether the rumors are being carefully planted by a studio to test audience interest, or they're simply organic fan excitement. One thing is clear. Pretty Woman 2 has the power to dominate headlines the moment it's officially announced. Mere idea of seeing Vivian and Edward again is enough to make people talk, debate, and dream. Asterisk, if Pretty Woman 2 does happen. One of the biggest questions is what story could possibly be worthy of bringing back Vivian and Edward after more than 30 years? The original ended on a fairy tale high note, with Edward climbing the fire escape, flowers in hand, and Vivian meeting him halfway. For millions of viewers, that was the perfect ending. But in real life, and in good storytelling, the years between, Happily Ever After, and now can be full of twists, challenges, and unexpected changes. A sequel would need to honor the charm of the original while showing how time has shaped these beloved characters. One possible storyline could focus on married life after decades together. Maybe Vivian and Edward built a beautiful life careers, travel, perhaps even a family, but are now facing a new stage where their worlds have shifted. Edward, once a confident businessman, might be stepping back from his empire, unsure of what comes next. Vivian, who grew into a confident and influential woman, might be stepping forward into a new passion, perhaps running a charity for women in need, inspired by her own journey. The heart of the film could be about finding new meaning together when the old rhythms no longer fit. Another path could take a more bittersweet turn. Imagine that life pulled them apart, not in a dramatic, bitter breakup, but in a slow, quiet way that sometimes happens over decades. The sequel could begin with them living separate lives only, to cross paths again because of a shared event, like the wedding of a mutual friend or a charity gala. The story could explore whether the magic they once had can survive years apart. This setup could bring both nostalgia and fresh emotional tension, letting audiences see familiar sparks reignite. A third idea could blend romance with mentorship. Vivian, now a respected figure in the fashion or business world, could cross paths with a young woman who reminds her of herself at the start of the first film, ambitious, hopeful, but facing obstacles. Edward could return to help in unexpected ways, and together they might guide this new character while also rediscovering parts of themselves they'd forgotten. This type of plot would keep the heart of Pretty Woman alive while passing the torch to a younger generation. It's potentially expanding the franchise's appeal. The sequel could also explore the modern world's changes in relationships and business. The original thrived in the late 80s and early 90s atmosphere, where phone calls, in-person meetings, and romantic gestures had a different pace. In today's world of social media, instant communication, and corporate globalization, Edward and Vivian's love story would unfold against a very different backdrop. A clever script could use these contrasts for humor and drama. Imagine Edward struggling with the speed of today's deals, or Vivian navigating online gossip about her relationship. Of course, there's also the question of tone. Pretty Woman wasn't just romance, it had moments of humor, tension, and empowerment. A sequel would have to balance all three. Fans would expect witty banter, heartfelt conversations, and maybe even a callback to the original's most iconic scenes. Would we see another dramatic shopping moment, this time with Vivian helping someone else experience that transformation? Or could the movie flip the roles entirely, with Edward learning something new about himself through Vivian's guidance? The loss of Gere Marshall, the original director, is another factor the sequel would need to address creatively. His warmth and comedic timing gave Pretty Woman its unique feel. Without him, the film would need a director who understands both the romance and the humor at the story's core. Kathleen Marshall, his daughter, another filmmaker with a deep appreciation for the original, could carry that legacy forward, no matter which direction the story takes. One thing is certain, audiences would want emotional depth. They don't just want to see Vivian and Edward together, they want to feel that their journey was worth waiting for. A well-written sequel could give fans not just nostalgia, but a richer, more layered portrait of two characters they've loved for decades. Asterisk when it comes to Pretty Woman 2. Story might grab headlines, but the casting is what will truly make or break the sequel. For most fans, there's no point in even calling it Pretty Woman without Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. They are Vivian and Edward, and their chemistry is the heartbeat of the original film. It's the reason people still talk about that fire escape ending, the reason audiences believe in their romance decades later. Any news about casting will instantly become the centerpiece of the conversation. Julia Roberts has been famously selective with her film roles in recent years. She's turned down several big offers, preferring projects that feel meaningful or fresh. In past interviews, she's admitted that reprising old roles isn't usually her style, but she's also said she'd never completely close the door on Vivian Ward if the story was right. The rumors suggest that the potential script for Pretty Woman 2 could be emotional and empowering enough to tempt her back. Some insiders even claim that Roberts has had early conversations with the production team, testing whether the vision aligns with her standards. Richard Gere, on the other hand, has shown more openness to revisiting past successes if the timing is right. Over the years, he's maintained a warm friendship with Roberts, and their mutual respect often shines through in interviews. Gere's willingness to return might hinge less on personal hesitation and more on the project's overall quality. Script director and production team. Fans remember how well they worked together again in Runaway Bride, proving that their on-screen magic can survive the years. If the sequel happens, audiences would also love to see Hector Elizondo return as Barney Thompson, the hotel manager, who became a fan favorite for his mix of charm and quiet mentorship. Elizondo worked with Gary Marshall on numerous films and has a long career of playing warm, guiding characters. Bringing him back would add a familiar touch and tie the sequel directly to the heart of the first film. Beyond the returning cast, a sequel could introduce new characters to expand the world. Perhaps a younger family member, Vivian and Edward's child, now an adult, could bring a fresh dynamic, challenging their parents in ways they never expected. This could open the door to casting a rising star who appeals to younger audiences. Someone with charisma, but also the depth to hold their own alongside Robertsâ and Gere. Names like Florence Pugh, Sydney Sweeney, or Glenn Powell often come up in fan discussions, not because they've been confirmed, but because they carry the mix of talent and star power that could attract a wide audience. The director's chair is another critical choice. With Gary Marshall no longer with us, the film would need someone who understands how to blend romantic warmth with sharp humor. Some fans dream of Nancy Meyers' The Holiday, Something's Gotta Give, taking over, as she has a proven talent for crafting sophisticated romance. Others point to Greta Gerwig, whose Barbie success showed she can merge nostalgia with a modern touch. Whoever it is, they'll have to navigate the fine line between honoring the original and creating something new. Another interesting casting rumor involves cameos. Some whisper about reuniting Robertsâ and Gere with actors they've worked with in other projects, giving longtime fans a thrill of recognition. There's even playful talk of featuring modern-day romantic comedy stars in small roles like Ryan Gosling or Jennifer Lawrence as a bridge between eras. Whether these ideas are grounded in reality or just fan fantasies, they highlight how invested audiences are in every detail of casting. The big challenge for casting will be balance. Bring back too many original faces, and the sequel risks feeling like a nostalgia trip with no fresh energy. Lean too heavily on new characters, and it could lose the emotional connection fans crave. The smartest move might be to center the story firmly on Vivian and Edward while surrounding them with a mix of familiar allies and intriguing new personalities. If all the right people say yes, the announcement alone could set social media on fire. But until there's an official reveal, speculation will keep growing. And with every public sighting, interview, or even vague social media posts from the actors, fans will be watching for clues. Asterisk every time a beloved classic gets a sequel. There's a mix of excitement and anxiety. And with Pretty Woman 2, the stakes are even higher. The original isn't just a hit movie. It's a cultural touchstone, a film that defined the romantic comedy genre for an entire generation. That kind of legacy comes with pressure, and not everyone is convinced a sequel is a good idea. In fact, the potential pitfalls are just as big as the opportunities, and one wrong move could turn a dream project into a disappointment. The first challenge is the danger of ruining the magic. The 1990 film had a perfect balance of humor, heart, and chemistry. Fans have held on to that fairy tale ending for decades, and any continuation risks changing the way people remember it. If the sequel doesn't live up to the original, or worse, if it takes the story in a direction that fans dislike, the backlash could be swift and loud. We've seen this happen before. Films like Sex and the City 2 and Bridget Jones's Baby drew criticism for feeling unnecessary or for mishandling beloved characters. Pretty Woman 2 would have to tread carefully to avoid that same fate. The second risk comes from shifting audience expectations. The world has changed since 1990, so have conversations about gender, relationships, and power dynamics. The original story, while iconic, came from a different cultural moment.
Ouch.
Today's viewers expect more layered storytelling, especially in romantic comedies. A modern sequel would need to adapt to these changes without losing the charm that made the first film a hit. It means crafting a narrative where Vivian is not just a romantic lead, but a fully developed character with agency, depth, and purpose. Anything less could spark criticism that the sequel is outdated or tone-deaf. Then there's the challenge of nostalgia. Fans want callbacks to the original iconic lines, familiar settings, maybe even a reprise of the famous shopping shime, but too much of that can make a film feel like it's leaning on old tricks instead of telling a fresh story. The sequel would need to find the sweet spot, enough nostalgia to make fans smile, but enough originality to keep them invested. It's a balancing act that many sequels struggle to pull off. Budget and production choices could also become sticking points. If a major studio backs the project, expectations will be sky high in terms of quality, marketing, and casting. But big budgets often come with big creative restrictions, and that could limit the freedom to tell a more intimate, character-driven story. On the flip side, if a smaller studio or streaming service takes the lead, they might have more creative flexibility, but less money to recreate the glamour and scale of the original. Either path carries risks. Another potential source of controversy is how the sequel handles Gary Marshall's absence. As the director of the original, Marshall brought a unique warmth and pacing to the story. Without him, fans might worry that the sequel will lack the same heart. Whoever steps in will inevitably face comparisons, and unfair or not, will be under intense scrutiny from day one. Casting decisions could spark debate as well. Even if Roberts and Gere return, the choice of supporting actors and new characters will matter. Bringing in a younger cast member could be a smart move to appeal to new audiences. But if that character feels shoehorned in or distracts from the main relationship, it could frustrate longtime fans. Likewise, recasting any original roles, if necessary, could trigger backlash. And finally, there's the reality that some fans simply don't want a sequel at all. For them, Pretty Woman is perfect as it is, and nothing that comes after could improve on it. They'd rather keep the magic intact than risk watching it altered. That means no matter how good the sequel is, it will face resistance from a portion of its audience. The challenge for the filmmakers will be to win over skeptics by proving that this isn't just a cash grab, but a continuation that adds genuine value to the story.